45 minutes or so, and there'll be ample time for questions at the end as well as during the challenge or during the webinar. Sorry. So I'm sure many of you are very familiar with the Zoom webinar platform, but just for your attention, there is two different features for you to use. If you'd like, there is a chat feature, which I see some of you are already using, which is wonderful. And then there's a Q&A feature. So as I am talking and sharing some information with you, if you do have a specific question, feel free to write it in that Q&A. And I believe one of the things that you can do if you see someone else has already asked a question, you can give it kind of that thumbs up or a vote up so that it goes to the top of the question queue, because I will be taking a look at those questions and addressing them at the end of the presentation. So please use the chat feature for, connecting and talking, maybe doing some webinar planning, and then the Q&A feature for any direct questions. All right. So with that, I see we're filling up nicely. We'll officially begin. Again, my name is Ken Zolatar. I'm the Manager of Stakeholder Relations at Participaction, and this is the Grant Recipients Guide to the Participaction Community Better Challenge. So today, we'll be talking with you about four things. We'll talk about the challenge fundamentals. So what is it, how it works, what is it, just those direct details. We'll talk about some registering and tracking tips and kind of a walkthrough of how that all works, some resources that we have to help you promote and engage your communities, and then next steps. As I noted earlier, this is a webinar. It is not a meeting. That means your microphones are muted. You can ask questions using the question feature. We'll answer them all at the end. And a video recording of this webinar will be sent to all registrants. So for attendees and for those who registered but could not attend, the webinar will be sent to you in a recording, and you are welcome to share that widely. The recording will be sent at about 24 hours from now is how the system is designed. So you'll get an email that has a link to this recording. Before we begin, I'd like to thank our sponsors of the Community Better Challenge, the Government of Canada, and Saputo. I'd also like to acknowledge that Participaction is on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. Okay, so let's begin with the challenge fundamentals. Many of you will likely be familiar with this, so we'll go through this quickly before we get into the registration and tracking section, but it's good to have a basis to know where we are starting from. The Community Better Challenge is entering into its third challenge year. So we had our first challenge in 2019. We had to postpone the challenge in 2020 to move it to 2021. And now we're into the 2022, our third challenge. So this is a nationwide competition that rewards Canada's most active community with $100,000. And when we say community, what we mean is a local municipality. And so all the organizations and all of the individuals that live in a municipality, all of their minutes and all of their engagement and all of their contributions go towards that local municipal score. And organizations can be anyone. So you can see we are mobilizing schools and workplaces and sport and recreation organizations and community associations. Whoever has a group of people that are active together in June can participate. There will be Canada's most active community, as well as prizes for each province and territory. So there is going to be 13 prizes awarded in the challenge for the most active community in Canada. And then if the most active community in Canada is from Alberta, we'll say they won't have a provincial prize, but there will be the most active community in British Columbia, the most active community in the Yukon, the most active community in Nova Scotia, and so on. I think this is really important to talk about. Knowing that there are going to be 13 winners, we have in total over 2,000 competing communities. So many of the communities will not, in fact, win a prize for all of their work. But that really isn't what this challenge is all about. The Community Better Challenge is a month-long challenge. It
Good.
is
Yes.
a
Okay.
wonderful way for recreation leaders
About 19.
and coaches and sport programmers and teachers um, to rally behind something, to get their community active, to take a look at a leaderboard and really use it as a vehicle to promote physical activity. Because we know that when everything gets better when you get active, and what the challenge is about is staying healthy in mind, body, and community spirit. We're hoping to re-energize communities to get active. We know through this very, very long pandemic that a lot of those in-person group activities have been shut. And this may be an opportunity, depending where you are in Canada, to bring people together in a safe and healthy way, and really celebrate that bit of community. And also to encourage people to join local physical activity programming. One of the big lingering effects or a positive side benefit of the Participaction Community Better Challenge is through the granting program, is through providing funds to reduce barriers for people to participate. And hopefully, and we've seen this through our surveys in the past years, we see bumps in increases in registration or increases in participation. When you allow someone to try something, they may like it. They may stick with it. They may become, a member of the team, or may become a member of the recreation center or a member of the program. And so we've seen certainly that benefit. And another great benefit really is that sense of belonging to your community. So using the community challenge as a way to bring people together who may not necessarily come together in their regular walks of life can do wonderful things for that sense of belonging, for that community pride, and for the broader physical activity sector in each community. How the challenge works. I alluded to this at the beginning. There really are two distinct audiences. So the first is any individual. So an individual in the community, a resident, can download the Participaction app. They can do that year round, and they can participate in challenges throughout the year. When they download the app and they're tracking their activity in June, all of those minutes go towards their local community score. So that's Sarnia, Kapuskasing, Halifax. All across the country, we've mapped out every single postal code in Canada to one of our 2,000 or more competing communities. And then organizations also participate by tracking group activity. So that would be, for example, a coach tracking their soccer practice, or a recreation programmer tracking their cycle fit class. So the individuals don't need to track the group activity, the organization tracks those. The individuals track their personal physical activity. All minutes are connected to municipalities based on their postal code, and we are happy to announce that there will be 50 finalists that will be eligible to be Canada's most active community. And those 50 finalists are divided by province and territory. So with our larger provinces, British Columbia, Alberta, Ontario, and Quebec, we will have 4 finalists. With our other provinces, we'll have 3 finalists, and with the territories, there'll be 2 finalists each. So all that adds up together to have 50 finalists. So there'll be finalists from every single province and territory. Talking about individual tracking, I'm happy to share with you the Participaction app. So a few things that are worth noting is that the app is free. As I've mentioned, you can download it today. It is designed by experts to help Canadians get the recommended 150 minutes of weekly physical activity. And so if you haven't downloaded the app, I highly encourage you to do so. It's a lot of fun. There is a tracking aspect of the app, so you can track your steps and your minutes. There's also content and videos within the app, so you can read about some inspirational stories, see some videos around potential workout techniques and ideas. And there's also a full prizing component. So just simply by being active, you are eligible to win weekly, monthly, and quarterly prizes. The other main thing to note that I think is really worth highlighting is it is designed by experts. It does have behavior change theory rooted in it. And so we're doing our best to make that app accessible for each user individually, wherever they are in their physical activity journey. And we do our best to give those little nudges and those little pops to say, you're 80% of the way to your goal and you're only 30% through the week. That's awesome. Keep going. Or there may be a nudge to say, you're only 20% of the way through your goal and you're 80% through the week. Maybe it's time to go for a walk. So just those little nudges to keep activity as part of your daily activity, or keep physical activity within your daily activity. So for organizations, you'll be tracking your work, and this is very specific for grant recipients. So all grant recipients have applied for a grant to run a physical activity in June. And after you do that event, we want you to track it on the website. And I should note that the website is much more friendly if you're using a laptop or desktop computer than if you're using a phone or a tablet. So when you get to the tracking part and the registering part, I highly encourage you to use a computer. And what we've done for the tracking is we've tried to make it as easy as possible with our certain funding requirements so that you can focus really on being active, on being a community champion, on being a community leader, and not spending so much time doing some of the administrative work. So when you track your activity, we're asking for 3 things: the date of the activity, the number of participants, and the average minutes of physical activity. I don't want you to tell me that person 1 was active for 20 minutes and person 2 was active for 25 minutes and person 3 was active for 30 minutes. If that's the case, I want you to say we had 3 people on average that were active for 25 minutes. That's 75 minutes of activity that is going towards our community score. And that bottom bullet is also something to note. So as a grant recipient, we are, it's a must do to track the activity that you have been funded for. We would also highly encourage you as part of the competition to track additional activities. So if you were funded as a school to do a bike rodeo, and then the next day your school is going to have a soccer game, or there's going to be a phys ed class, we encourage you to track that activity as well. It does not need to be an activity that you received a grant for in order to track. You can track any group physical activity in the month of June. So you might want to know how this whole thing is scored. How do we take all of those minutes and all of those individuals and all of those organizations and determine who are those top 50 finalists? And it really comes down to these 3 things. So the first is the minute total. And what we've done for each of those 3 aspects is we've taken the sum total, and then we've also taken a total that's divided by the community's population. Otherwise, the competition wouldn't be fair because the larger population cities would win automatically. And so we've, through our 2 years of data, we've been able to create this scoring framework that really makes it a fair competition for municipalities of all sizes. But the first thing is minutes. And so as an organization, your job is to track your activity, to track those minutes. And you also can promote the Participaction app, promote it through the individuals in your network, promote it to have more individuals also participating and tracking their individual minutes. And it's not just the minutes, it's also the level of engagement. And so if Community 1 had 1 person that downloaded the app and they tracked 10,000 minutes, and Community 2 had 100 people download the app and they all tracked 100 minutes, both communities tracked 10,000 minutes, but the community that had 100 people tracking is going to score better. So the number of people that are tracking, and this can be on the Participaction app or on the Participaction website if you do not have a smartphone or have a mobile device. So you can do that tracking on the Participaction website as well, but the total number of people matter. The second thing in that same line, the total number of organizations matter. And so as an organization, we encourage you to connect in with some of your partners to say, you should do this too. Maybe there's a neighboring school. Maybe there is a neighboring sports club. Maybe there's a neighboring community outreach group. Whatever it is that may be, the number of organizations that track also matter and also are a significant factor in the overall community score. So as a recap, back in 2021, we had municipalities, local organizations, individuals participate in the challenge. We were able to track over 400 million minutes of activity collectively across Canada, and 8,000 local events were held. we were thrilled and proud to see North Grenville being in Canada's most active community. Now we're going to talk a little bit about registration and tracking. You can't register yet. So I appreciate the eagerness and the excitement that we're seeing across the community. But as of May 18th, when you go to the participaction.com/challenge website, it will look slightly differently. There's going to be a big button right near the top that says register today or sign in today. I'm not sure the exact wording, but there'll be a big purple button. And that is where you can register for the challenge. And one of the things to consider when you're thinking about it is the idea of having one registration per location is the easiest way for us to understand how the challenge is working, is likely the easiest way administratively for your organization. And so what I mean by that is if you are representing a large organization, if you are the city of Ottawa, we're not expecting that you'd have one administrative person track all of the physical activity across all of the locations and all of the health and fitness or recreation centers in the city of Ottawa. What makes more sense is to have each of those recreation centers, each of those physical locations, have one person appointed to track that location's physical activity. So it might be, I don't know the City of Ottawa Recreation Center's names, but City of Ottawa Recreation Center A, City of Ottawa Recreation Center South Side, so on and so forth, to help understand how many different groups are participating. On the other side, if you're from a school, you could consider having the option of having, the grade 3 class track and the grade 4 class track and the grade 5 class track. So you'd have 3 different people all tracking on behalf of that single school, but that whole school is one location. And so that would make more sense to have one single staff person collecting the material on behalf of the entire school. So that's, when we say one contact per location, that's what I'm trying to communicate there. So for the registration process, you can see the little screenshot there. We're asking you for your first name, and we're asking for your email and for your password, and there's a certain password code therein. When you're setting up your organization profile, we'd like you to use the same organization name and the same email that you used to apply for a grant. I'll talk more about that in detail later. And then later on in the registration process, we will ask you for your postal code, and that's important because that does map back to your competing community. After you register, we're going to ask you to track. And you can't track activity yet. You'll be able to track activity starting June 1st. And so there's a big box after you register that says track organization minutes on the left side of your screen, and then it'll be track individual minutes on the right side. So as a grant recipient tracking on behalf of an organization, you'll click track organization minutes. A few notes about tracking. We want to make this, again, as administratively easy as possible. And so I'll give you an example where you can track multiple events under one activity. And another note is that you don't need to track on the same day it happens. You can wait till the end of the week, put everything together and track the activity then, but you do need to track before the end of the challenge. So if you're doing an activity on June 30th at 7 p.m., you need to track it before midnight. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about what I mean by tracking multiple events under one activity. So let's assume that you run the pool at a recreation center, and you have classes running every day of the week and every hour of the week. So from Monday from 10 to 11, you're doing a swimming session, and from 11 to 12, you're doing a swimming session. And on Tuesday from 10 to 11, you're doing a swimming session. By the end of the week, you have likely run 60 swimming sessions. And you know that each of those sessions had 25 people for 60 minutes or 30 people for 60 minutes. It's always going to be 60 minutes. So instead of creating 60 activities where, instead of creating 60 activities for each of those sessions, you can instead just create one. And you can title it with the thumbs up on the right, you can title it Weekly Swimming Summary. And so with one entry, you can say we had, just doing the kind of adding the math on the left of the Monday 25 plus 20 plus 30 gives you your 75 people were active for 60 minutes. And so that way makes it a lot easier, a lot less administrative, and again, gives you that time to focus on the work that you need to be doing, which is getting your communities active. If you have any questions about that, you can certainly contact us and we can help guide, give some tips and suggestions on some of those kind of larger tracking activities. This same logic applies. I know that we do have activity log sheets, and there are community members who don't want to track themselves, who don't have a smartphone, and we've allowed them and encouraged them to use the Participaction activity log sheet to track their weekly activity. And oftentimes there is maybe it's someone from the local health center or from the recreation center or from the school who is collecting all of those activity sheets and putting them together. So we don't need to have one activity for each individual. Again, you can take all of those sheets and say, do that connection to say, okay, person A was active for 500 minutes, person B was active for 300 minutes. In the weekly summary, you can figure out how many people were active and then what was their average total and put it in as one entry. Because I think that will make your lives easier, which is something that we love to do at Participaction. So I'm going to go through that, just a quick step-by-step of the registration process. There will be a PDF for outlining this on the website, but it's good to go through now. So as we talked about earlier, the first step after going to participaction.com/challenge and clicking sign up now or register now is you'll see this purple sign in location. And so we'll ask you to put in your first name, last name, email, and password. If you are a Participaction app user and you're using the same email, you will use your same password as the Participaction app. Or if you participated last year, right within the sign up system, you'll also see a button for login because you may get a note to say your email already exists, and you can go through forgot password, or you can go to login and use that. So your history is saved with us. After you've created an account and after you've logged in, this is the page I was talking about with the two big boxes, track organization or track personal. You will track organization. The next step, and you can do this before the challenge begins. So you can do this when the portal opens as of May 18th. You can create your organizational profile using the same name as you put into your grant application. And so you may have put, in the grant application, you may have put Sir Frederick Banting Secondary School. And if you put in the organization legal name here, Banting SS. When we're at the end of the challenge, when we're matching up, did this grant recipient track? That's one of the ways that we do it. We try and find the same name. And if it's not the same, then it makes it a little bit trickier for us. And so the same thing with the email. The email that you use to apply for the grant should be the email that you use in your tracking and in your registration. Step 1, fill out your organizational profile. Step 2, will be register your activity. And you can also do this in advance of the challenge. You do not need to wait for June 1st to register your activity. So that's where you could put in your swimming and basketball and think about all of the activities that you're doing, not the events that you do, but what are the big activities that you can do and what if those would be summarized kind of in that nice weekly summary to make it easy. After you register your activity, it'll show up on your dashboard like this. So you can see that I created Ken's awesome virtual event. And on the right side of the screen, there's a little button that says add minutes, and the brackets say as of June 1st. So until June 1st, I can't add minutes. And if I want to add a new activity, right at the bottom, there's a big purple button that says add new activity with a plus sign, so I can create another thing. When I do, after June 1st, when I do get to add my minutes, this is what it looks like. And so you'll see Ken's awesome virtual event as the big title on the top. It's going to ask me, what activity did I do? and I'll pick one of those boxes. I'll pick other. I'll put in my date. I'll say how many individuals took part in my activity. On average, how many minutes of physical activity were completed per participant. And so for this, my awesome virtual event is a virtual dance party. I'm going to be a DJ. It's going to be wonderful. And I had 50 people attend, and they attended for 30 minutes. And then I'll break down the gender, and then I'll press submit. And now the next thing after my first entry is my 50 people that were active for my 30-minute dance party is a total of 1,500 minutes. So you can see there's that big number there on the screen, 1,500 minutes. And if I do a dance party next Friday, I'm going to add minutes again. So I can add minutes to that same Ken's Awesome virtual event as many times as the activity occurs. The deadline to track is July 1st at 12 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So that means if you are in Newfoundland and Labrador, you can track on July 1st until 3:30 in the morning. If you are in Ontario, you can track until 3 o'clock in the morning and tracking back. So this allows everyone across the country to be right up to that final minute deadline of the challenge. So if you are doing an activity on June 30th, please, please, please register it and track it before midnight of that day. The next thing we'll talk about is grant recipient responsibilities, which is to host your event. But we know that when you were putting forward your application, you likely had some event specifics, and you were planning those in January and February, and a lot can change between January and February and June. And so your specifics can change. That's okay. What we understand the overall premise from your application is that you are committed to getting people active in June. And so that's the thing that we're going to hold you to. You have likely already received a letter. You've already likely received a physical check. And within that check within that letter, there's an outline of kind of a lengthy explanation, almost like a terms and conditions of what it means to be funded through Participaction and through the Public Health Agency of Canada. And within that explanation, it does say that the Public Health Agency of Canada has the ability, if they so choose, to audit your event to make sure that the funds were used accurately. And so I encourage you, as you are planning your event, to keep a record of expenses and your receipts. We at Participaction don't need them. We don't need you to send us scans. We don't need you to send us copies or anything in the mail. It is very unlikely that the Public Health Agency of Canada is going to audit your event. But just to be on the safe side, it's a good thing to keep a record of your expenses and your receipts on your files. The next thing, we've talked about it, is tracking your event and the importance of using your same email and org name as your grant application. One of the things that we'll be doing closer to when the challenge starts is we'll be sending all of the grant recipients an email that includes that summary information. So we'll say the portal is open. This is the org name that you put into the grant portal. This is the email that you used. This is your event title. Just to give you that refresher so you have those things. Because as mentioned, it's hard to remember what happened in January as you're getting into June. And the last part of your responsibilities is to fill out the post-program survey. So at the end of the challenge, most likely in the first week of July, we will send you a survey to say, how did it go? How can we improve? What recommendations do you have? Because we do certainly value your feedback as people that are participating in the challenge. And beyond that, we need your support. So Participaction as an organization creates the platform. We create the event, we create the idea behind the event, and we can provide some funding for those events. But really, the whole efforts of becoming an active nation, the whole efforts of getting communities out and active and creating that sense of belonging, creating those connections to mental and physical health, really does come through you and starts with you. And as we continue to improve and adapt this challenge, we need to hear from you to know what we can do better, what we can do to make your experience easier and more fruitful. And so there will be a survey coming. We do ask you to fill it out. If you're already signed up to a Participaction newsletter, that's a great start. If you're receiving emails from myself or Megan or info@Participaction, chances are there's an opportunity where you can whitelist or identify Participaction as a safe email sender or a safe domain, just to make sure that you do get that email, so you can fill out that survey. And as always, remember to check your junk or spam email because sometimes things get filtered there. So we are getting into the exciting part around resources and tips. On our Participaction website today, so these are up and live, we do have event planning manuals, and they are manuals for community organizations, for workplaces, and for schools. 3 different manuals that all have similar content, but are a little bit nuanced to the different audiences. So each manual includes the general information about the challenge, similar to what I shared at the beginning of this webinar. How to register info, an event checklist. So this is the, make sure you're considering everything that you need to have an effective event. Tips to host virtual events, if that's one of the areas where you're looking. And then a big thing, which I think would be very useful, is the sample communications messaging. And so within those toolkits, we do have sample newsletter posts, sample social media posts. We have different things that you can download. You can download the Community Better Challenge logo. You can download some of the images that we use for our Facebook and Instagram and Twitter posts. And then lastly, we have tips and resources to be inclusive, accessible, and safe. And this is something that is very important to Participaction. It's very important in our grant assessment to who we're able to fund and who we're able to provide grants to, is largely based on this understanding of health equity. And so we know through our studies and through our science that different populations face different barriers to being physically active. And one of the goals of the challenge is to remove those barriers so that everyone can be active equitably. And so we've created tips and resources and connections, and we've connected with other partners who are experts in the health equity space to help guide and design that. So it's a very good section to read and review, especially when you're thinking about approaching potentially a different audience and really getting into what the Community Better Challenge is about, which is bringing people together from different areas, different walks of life, and having that interest and exposure and trying something new. So all of those are available for download at participaction.com/challenge. So all of those 3 kits were available in 2021 as well. They're fairly similar. We've made some updates. We've also made a brand new resource. So this resource is specifically geared towards municipalities. It is our Municipal Engagement Guide. It has some of the same materials. It's about the Participaction Community Better Challenge. It has those sample communications on how to promote the challenge. And it talks more specifically from a municipality's lens around how to do very well in the competition, how to win $100,000. And so if you are representing a municipality, I highly encourage you to download, read, and share that resource. Coming up in a few weeks, we'll also have a few more resources available for download. So that will be the how to register and track PDFs. So that will be, as I kind of walk through this webinar, the screenshots, the step-by-step of here's how you sign into an account, here's how you register and track your activity, which is something that is very useful to share for individuals who are looking to participate and for organizations who are looking to participate. We do have an activity log sheet. So that is the document specifically geared for an individual. It is a fillable PDF. It goes, it has 1 week of space. So it says, on Monday, what did you do? I was running. How long did you run for? 30 minutes. And you can fill that out, print it off, or email it to somebody for kind of that broader capturing. And we do know that when you do have that commitment, when you do have the motivation, and when you are writing things down, you are more likely to stick to them. It's just a good behavior change technique to stay active, is to track your activity. We will post an updated competing community list. So as I mentioned, we have over 2,000 competing communities in the challenge. So there will be a PDF on our website that has each province and all the competing communities listed alphabetically. It is, it's not an interesting read, but I encourage you, if you're curious to know what your competing community name is, especially if you are in a smaller municipality. You can download the document, press Control F, and type things in to see what is there. There's also frequently asked questions, contest rules, and then the finalist criteria and questions. So those will also be public in advance. So this is more so for the municipality partners in mind, but you'll be able to see what questions we will ask you if you are one of those top 50 finalists as of June 1st. And then you can start planning your application before the actual finalist submission, before anyone is actually announced, because it is a fairly small window between when we announce our finalists to when we expect that submission. It is short. There's only about 5 or 6 questions and only about 200 or 150 words per question, but it's always better to prepare in advance. Going back to the toolkit, I wanted to share part of those communication resources. So in each of the toolkits, there is a message similar to this that is specifically designed for Facebook or Twitter or any other social media that you may use. I don't need to read it out, but you can see that it says, starts with join the Participaction #community challenge, June 1st to June 30th. It includes a link for tracking, and that image that you see with the tagline, physical activity helps me, you, and us, is available for download. So you can copy that text, put it into a tweet, copy that image, insert it, and now you are fully on brand, fully supporting the Community Better Challenge, using that consistent language to get people active. Now, this is something that is modifiable. This is written in Participaction voice and Participaction brand. If you want to take some of those details and tweak it to better meet your needs, you are welcome to do so. We encourage you to keep the hashtag, keep the link, use the image, and just keep some of those high-level details. Similarly, we've also created an email template that you can use and additional emails just to talk about how you're getting your community active. So all of those are available in the toolkit. Another aspect for grant recipients is the ability to promote the Participaction app. So this is something where we talked about it earlier. The more people that are participating in the challenge in your community, the more people that are downloading the app and tracking activity on the website, the better it is for your community's likelihood of winning the challenge. And more importantly, the better it is for the community's health and well-being. We know that when people are using a health tracking app, that they are going to be more active. And so it's a good thing to promote, certainly within the challenge window, so from June 1st to June 30th, but the app is something that can be used year-round to keep people active, which is always good. If you are hosting a virtual event, or if you are looking at some ways that you can get your community active, or get maybe your staff or colleagues active, one of the things that you can use is a Participaction video. It's a great way to start a virtual event. Maybe you're having a brainstorming meeting and you want to spend the first 3 minutes being active. There are videos on the Participaction website which are geared for different amounts of time for different groups and audiences. And so, for example, you can see that there's a family first 4-minute workout, which is focused more on getting active with your kids. There is a get fit as you sit workout, which is specifically designed. It's a small circuit, 4 minutes long, designed for people that are sitting in chairs all day. And maybe your Monday to Friday 9 to 5 job is desk bound. So it's a great way to break up your day and break up the day of your colleagues. There's also some more traditional videos that can be used and shared, and it can be as simple as screen sharing as your virtual event. You don't need to have your own professional fitness trainer host an event with their own sound. You can play the Participaction video and get active with that. So we have a cardio core 15-minute video, an agility and reactivity workout, which is 23 minutes long, which is what you would typically see as a traditional workout video with different variations of physical activities with 3 different instructors on the screen. And so that was created in partnership with the YMCA of Greater Toronto. All of those videos are available at participaction.com, content, fit break videos. So we're getting close to the end of the time where I stop talking and start answering questions, which is always exciting. The next steps. This is mostly a summary. We're going to ask you to register your organization on our Participaction website. We're going to ask you to read the promotional material that I've talked about. Take that promotional material and engage your community. Get people excited, get them active, get them participating. Start planning your events. And you can plan these events in concert with other community organizations. When the challenge starts, we'll ask you to track your activity. At the end of the challenge, we'll ask you to respond to the survey. Nothing new. It's all things that I've talked about going through this webinar. Some of the key dates. There will be another webinar, not specific to grant recipients, but more broadly for other community organizations. And so you obviously don't need to attend, you're here today. But if there is another organization that you think really should be participating in the challenge, you can tell them about the May 12th webinar. By May 13th, all grant recipients that indicated yes, they would like a celebration kit, that box of swag, should have received it. You also should have received your check. We would have mailed the check specifically to the address put in the grant application. So there is, we did our best to mitigate, but there could be an opportunity where a check may be mailed to the wrong address, or there may be a postal code typo error. But the checks have all been sent. They should all be in the mail. So if you haven't received them by May 13th, please get in touch with us and we can help problem solve that challenge. By May 18th, the registration portal will be open. June 1st, the challenge begins. June 30th, the challenge ends. Early July, the survey is emailed. And then just so all of you know, after the challenge ends, there is kind of a 3-step process to identify from those top 50 finalists to identify the actual 13 winners and the single most active community in Canada. And so we do a finalist vetting period. We go through all of their submissions and entries and make sure that everything is accurate. In mid-July, we invite those finalists to answer those finalist submission questions and provide some background detail, which includes, we ask for photo or video evidence. So people, as you are tracking your activities and planning these things, if you're thinking that your community may be in the running to be the champion, it's good to keep a record of those things. And then in late July, the winners will be announced. So now I'll take a look at some of the questions and I'll do my best to answer them as quickly as I can. These are some that I anticipate. So the first is, we did say that the granting amount was between $500 and $1,500. And many grant recipients would have said, we'd like $1,500 to do our project. And unfortunately, due to the large volume of high quality applicants, Participaction could not give most organizations the full allotment of funding that they had requested. And so many grant recipients received partial funding. And if you're asking yourself the question, is Participaction expecting me to do 100% of what I said I could do with only 70% of the funding? The answer is no. We are providing you that grant because we believe in your organization and your ability to get your community active in June. And if that means that you're planning to do 4 events, one event every Friday, and we only gave you partial funding, maybe you can only do 3 now, and that is okay. So you can reduce the size or quantity of your activity. Another question that we get a lot is, can we use other grants and other sources of funding to supplement for our Participaction event? And the answer is yes. The more money that you can put together from our organization or from maybe a local wellness coalition or a local family foundation, local sponsors, is all great. It is the more people that you can come through the door, the more barriers that you can reduce. It is not, the Participaction grant is not a kind of the sole proprietary funding thing that is just for us. It is certainly something that can be shared, and you can get other sources of funding to support as well. Can you change your activity? Yes. So if it is a particularly hot, smoggy day and there's a weather advisory, do not host your activity on that day because you said you would. If it is a thunderstorm, do not host your outdoor activity on that day if you're expecting that, you're expecting 100 people and with weather in a day like this, there's going to be 7 people instead. It is okay to postpone. It is okay to change. It is okay to adapt. It is okay to augment. It is okay to do any other thesaurus word around modifying your event. The big aspect, though, is to make sure your event happens in June. If for unforeseen circumstances, the whole thing needs to be postponed and postponed again and postponed, and it happens after June, if it happens in July, that activity can't be tracked. And so as best you can, we want you to host that activity sometime between June 1st and June 30th. And lastly, a question of when should I cash my check? So when you cash your check, we want you to cash that as early as you get it. You don't need to go and spend the money first and cash it after. Because when you cash your check, that indicates to us that it got to the right place, which is really helpful. So the earlier it is cashed, the better. We every year we tend to get notes, maybe in August or September, of people saying, "Oh, like I just found the check in the drawer. Can I still cash it?" And we say yes, as long as you actually held the event in June. So we do encourage you to cash that check when you get it. So I'm going to flip to the questions now, but I do have my email up. So Ken Zolatar, Manager of Stakeholder Relations, as well my colleague Megan, who has been answering some of your questions as I've been chatting, can be reached at projects@participaction.com. So I know that we're past our 45 minutes. We're getting close to the hour. If you do need to jump off the webinar, you've always been free to do so, but you can do so now. And you can ask us those questions directly, and we'll happily answer as soon as we can. So let me do a quick check of the Q&A, and I'll do my best to answer. So the first question I see says, if individuals are tracking themselves, can their activity minutes be connected to the organization's overall minutes? And the answer to that is no. And in part because when we're talking about the broader scope of the challenge, we're not looking at, if we take London, Ontario, for example, we're not looking at 3 organizations in London, Ontario and saying, okay, this school tracked 500,000 minutes and this school tracked 100,000 minutes and this school tracked 50,000 minutes. What we're looking at is all of those organizations and all of those individuals, how many minutes did they track for London? And so all of the minutes don't connect back to a single organization, they connect back to the broader competing community. There's another question just on the competing community list. You may see names that are fairly similar. So there's a note saying, I noticed Kamloops has 2 communities, Kamloops and Kamloops 1. And so how our competing communities are named is interesting. So it's based on Statistics Canada data through something called the Census Subdivision Area. And the Census Subdivision is the Statistics Canada way of identifying the closest proximity to a municipality. Kamloops 1 and many other competing communities that have a number beside them tend to be Indigenous communities. So it may be a reserve community. It may just be a segmented area, and so that's you may see that a couple of times. You may also see specifically in BC, there's something called electoral areas. And so, for example, there's Port Alberni, there's Alberni, Clayoquot A, Alberni, Clayoquot B, Alberni, Clayoquot C. And if you go to the Statistics Canada website and you can type that in, you can see the map of what that area represents. And so and I actually had a conversation with someone from Port Alberni earlier today, and they asked the question saying, can we put this all together? Like our municipality services all of these areas. Our recreation unit services all of the Alberni Clayoquots A through G. So can we put them all as one municipality under our banner? And the answer is yes. So the next question is, what if the postal code that was used for the grant application is not in the municipal location of where the event will take place? And so yeah, that question says, we have teams coming from all over Ontario coming to participate at our event. How do we track that? And so in that case, with people coming from across all over Ontario, the event organizer is still that primary tracker. And so if we have, for example, a soccer tournament, the soccer tournament is happening in Aurora, and there's teams from Guelph and Tillsonburg and other places in Ontario. Aurora is the community, and the Aurora Soccer Association is the community that is putting on the event. And so as a result, they are going to be the ones that are rewarded with the minutes. It's where the best thing to do is have it where the event takes place or is coordinated by the organizing body. So you wouldn't have the Guelph soccer team and put in a different postal code for them. So each organization can only track based on the one postal code that they use. And this is and so if the grant application is different than the municipal location, it may make sense to use the postal code where the event is happening. It's a difficult question to answer kind of as writ large, but if you do have additional follow-up, feel free to email myself or Megan, and we can help better understand the situation and make that clarifying piece. But I think another example of this might be a marathon. And so if there is a marathon that's happening in Ottawa, you're going to have participants from all over Canada participate in that marathon. But it is the Ottawa Marathon group that is doing the work, doing the promotion, spending the money to get people together. So that's the organization that's doing the work would be the beneficiaries of the minutes and of the tracking. So that's where Ottawa would receive those minutes. So one of the questions is, do you share a list of which organizations received grants? The answer to that currently is no, we do not have a master list, but we did add a new feature. So the follow-up says, I'd be interested to know if any other groups in my community received a grant. One of the things that we did this year's grant application was we put a little checkbox that said, would you be open to us sharing your information with other grant recipients? And so that is something that we can do. So we can make those different groups and pods, and that's something that I will commit to doing. So if we do have multiple grant recipients from Ottawa who have all indicated, yes, you can share my information with other grant recipients in Ottawa, we will send that email to create those connections, because that is certainly a great way to connect and to combine events and to create kind of maybe that full 30-day event calendar if your events are on different days and different locations, to make sure that your whole community is active. So there's another question says, if we are tracking for an organization as well as individually, do we need separate login accounts, or can that be done under the same email? So it can be done under the same email. It may be, if you're able to, all of your organization minutes need to be tracked on the Participaction website. Your personal minutes could be tracked on the Participaction app. And if you sync your app to your Google Fit or Apple Health tracker, it'll track automatically anytime you go for a walk. So that may be just a way to help separate the two. You can track both activities, both organization and personal activity, on the website. The navigation between them may be a little bit tricky. So you may need to log out and log back in and then click that. In this session, I'm tracking for me as an individual and for my family. You can also put in family members that you're tracking for, up to 10 people. So it can be used under the same email. There's a question saying, do you have school videos? We do not. There's not a specific video that is built for classes. There are videos that are more built for children and youth that can be adapted. But certainly there are other organizations that we work with that may be an interesting source of knowledge, such as PHE Canada, so Physical Education Canada, or OFIA, the Ontario Physical Education Association, may have some videos that are specific for school, but I'm not sure about that. So there's a question saying, we have registered as a single school and we have 3 other division schools in a 40-kilometer area in the same municipality. can we track for them as well? The answer is yes, you can. But thinking about the administrative ease, if it's possible to have one member from each of those division schools track for their own school, it paints a clearer picture of how many organizations were involved. And so my recommendation would be to have each school have one person tracking on behalf of that school if that is a challenge. Certainly one organization or one school can track on behalf of the others, and I would do it in that same summary style to say this was the weekly activity from division school 1. And you can put that into the description so we can see what that looks like. So another question says, how do individuals get connected to the broader competing community? So one of the interesting things that we added to last year's challenge is within the Participaction app, when you log into the challenge, you can see which competing community you're a part of. And you can also see where that community ranks through the leaderboard. And so on the Participaction app, I'm from Toronto. When I log in and I put in my Toronto postal code, which starts with an M, it'll show me Toronto is ranked 7th in Ontario, and it'll say, here's who's ranked, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th. I'll see a segment of the leaderboard. And it'll also say Toronto is ranked, maybe it's 15th nationally. And again, I'll see that little segment. So within the app, you'll be able to know what competing community you're a part of, and then where you are currently placed within the competition. In terms of how do individuals know about local events in their community, about getting active at a Participaction community event, we don't have a mechanism nationally for that. That is that sort of local engagement would be driven by the local organizations of the local municipalities. And for all grant recipients who maybe aren't part of the municipality, but really want their municipality to buy in and spread this opportunity widely across their broader network, I encourage you to take that municipality guide and forward it. Forward it to your city councilor, or forward it to your mayor to say, our school or our club is getting behind this, and we think you should too. Because really, I think having the municipality, from what we've seen in the past from past finalists, it's a great measure of success when you have city councilors aware and sharing information and being that kind of central community hub. So there's a question saying, I'll be taking the lead for the whole community. And can I see the data tracked by other organizations in the community and individuals? I want to offer prizes to the most active individuals. So I think that's a bit of a complicated answer. The answer is maybe. And I think we can have a conversation. So if you send me an email, we can chat more about the specific details around that. One of the things that we can't do is get it down to individual level data. So when we do share data with different partners, be it typically as a municipality or as a province, we do have some provincial funders who request that sort of data. It's all aggregate and anonymized. So we might be able to say, we're not going to be able to say Ken was active for 300 minutes this past week. We'll be able to say there were 100 male users aged between 20 and 45 who were active, and on average they were active for 300 minutes, or on average they took 12,000 steps a day. So we can't provide individual names or emails to other people. That's all part of the privacy terms and conditions within the app. On the organization side, just thinking about, can you connect in with those local organizations? As long as they've indicated yes to their grant application, to say, yes, I want to be connected with others, we can share that information. So I encourage you to send me an email, and we can sort that out. Yeah, so there's a question asking for the clarity on If the postal code used for the grant application is not in the municipal location where the event will take place, what do you do? I think you should put, it is a little bit of a case-by-case basis. It's a bit hard to answer, but I think you should put the postal code where the event is taking place. So I think that's probably the shortest, easiest answer. I'm going to do a quick scan of the chat to see if there's anything else to note, but it looks like I think you've all done a wonderful job of putting into the questions side. So that is wonderful. So with that, I want to thank you for your attendance. Thank you for your participation. My email is there. Megan's email is there. We will be sending a recording of this webinar as well as some links to the Participaction website and to some of those most relevant resources for you. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day and a happy and active weekend. Thank you so much, everyone.